Friends, welcome to another episode of Work, Life, Play, where we're on a hunt for sustainable rhythms, for a meaningful life, to make an impact, to love people that we're entrusted with well, to learn to lead ourselves in new and life-giving, invigorating ways, and to get more of our life back. There is more going on here than ashes to ashes and dust to dust. So today's episode, I interviewed my son in our VW bus. He just spent the last 7 months living with us, moved back from California during the pandemic, and just recently launched to relocate nearby up in Denver. And we had this beautiful conversation. We actually had to do it twice. The first time we did it, for some reason, the recording didn't work, which is the only time that's ever happened to me in almost 200 episodes. So we did a take two, which I think was equally impactful and meaningful. What you're going to hear from him is he's knocking on the door of turning age 25. And not 5+ years ago, he was wandering the streets of Costa Mesa looking for cigarette butts that weren't totally smoked, and trying to figure out how to get sober. So you're going to hear how he's making decisions about his life now at age 25, how he's handling uncertainty, how, in his words, how he looks for higher power nudges, and how he pays attention to his spirit and navigates his life. I think there's a lot we can learn. I know there's a lot that we can learn from him. I learn from him all the time. So introduce to you my son, Holden McHugh, in his invitation for us for how to live life well. You can do this, friends. It's good for us. Let's keep going. Holden McHugh, welcome to the Work, Life, Play podcast in the bus.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us a story about apple pie, walking down the street, cartoon characters, and the nudge from the divine.
I think there's a few different ways to listen to higher power for me. It really matters to me to live my life based on the direction I think is being intended for me. And there's negative ways to do that. There's when you feel anxiety or stress or anger. That's usually a nudge that it's like a check engine light for me. I'm on the wrong path. But there's also a positive way to follow that nudge. And the best way I know how to describe it is that there's like this fat guy, and it's an old Disney cartoon, and he's walking through the forest down a trail. And then it cuts to like this 1950s housewife who's in some cabin somewhere, who's making an apple pie, and she pulls it out of the oven and like puts it on the windowsill. And then it cuts back to the fat guy, and he's just walking down the trail, and the little like wafts of the apple pie smell are like, wafting down the trail, and you see little swirls go past his nose. And then like as soon as he smells it, he like closes his eyes and like lifts and like levitates off the ground, and his like little feet go up behind him, and he just like floats over towards where the apple pie is.
And that was the analogy that you used yesterday, talking about where you feel like you are right now. So tonight, I'm driving you to the airport. You're flying from DIA to Orange County, where you've lived for the last 5 years. The last 6 months, you've been living here with us at home in Colorado Springs. Original plan was to go back to the LA area, actually find your own place. You've been looking at that for 6 months. You've been drooling over apartments and everything from probably almost spreadsheeting it to where you're going to be and what neighborhoods are safe and where you can park your car and et cetera, et cetera. And then just in the last week or so, you've pivoted, 2 weeks probably, and it started around a tattoo that you were getting and this kind of experience that you had related to that. So I think what I hear you saying is back to the guy with the smelling of the wafts of the pie in the air. As you experience God's invitation in this nudge, that's what you're following versus the path you were headed on. So take us back to maybe even rewind to 5 years ago and tell us what it was like, where you were, what was happening in your life, and then we'll come back to today, to this pending what happens next with the apple pie smell. Yeah.
Yeah, so 5 years ago, I was about, I don't know, I guess I was like 9 months sober or something. And I'm a drug addict and an alcoholic and a sick one at that. And I'd been through 3 rehabs, flunked out of my first college. I think I was in the process of flunking out of my second college. And I was getting sober in Costa Mesa, California. As a result, I was batshit crazy, just insane. I've said this before, and you've heard me say that I'm so grateful for drugs and alcohol because they were the closest band-aid I had for the gouging wound I had, and God-sized hole in my soul. And I was doing the best job I knew how to stuff it. That doesn't excuse any of the action. I just now know that thank God they saved my life. But what happened is that those tools really work. I wasn't using them because I hated them. I was using them because I loved them and they worked really well until they didn't. They were fun, and then they were fun with problems, and then they were just problems eventually, and they stopped working.
And how long was that? How long were they fun? Then how long were they fun with problems? And then how long were they just problems, drugs and alcohol?
I'm really, really grateful that I nosedive really fast. So I had a very short window of the fun part. I had my first drink when I was 12, or first drunk when I was 12. And that was great. Probably a normal person would have considered a blackout and taking your pants off fun with problems. But for me, it was just fun at the time. And
I haven't heard this part. Keep going.
And yeah, there's layers to that story. But so yeah, I guess normal people would probably consider that fun with problems. But for me, it was just fun. Cue.
One of your phrases is normies.
Normies, yeah.
Yeah, so tell us what a normie is real quick and then go back to your story.
For anyone that's familiar with Harry Potter, it's like the equivalent of muggles. But normies are non-alcoholics, non-drug addicts, non-whatever addiction people.
Yeah. So those that would think taking your pants off and blacking out might be problem.
A normie might consider that maybe not even fun with problems. They
might just be a problem. All right, so continue.
So that was like first drink. I had my first access to my own income and car, and I discovered pot at like 17. And I went from anxious. I was in this like weird existential crisis, and I was not okay with being gay. And I was going to a Christian school in a really heavily conservative Christian town. So I was just add all the other woes of drama in middle school and high school, not knowing who you are, and acne on your lip, and just all the problems that people have. So I was there, and then I found pot, and I loved alcohol too. I just didn't have a lot of access to it. And I was really great at it, and it was the first thing ever that made a dent in what I call the corrosive battery acid feeling in my chest. My whole life, it's always felt like there was this burning battery acid poured right on my sternum. And all the therapy, all the worship camps, talking to horses, hypnotism, drinking liquid gold with some lady in Tennessee, none of those things ever made a dent on that burning corrosive battery acid feeling. And for the first time ever, I don't know if it was gone or if it just dissipated or lessened, but mind-altering substances related to number. I don't do so well here. It hurts for me to show up and live normal life and breathe. And these mind-altering substances allowed me to not be here. I could go to some other world dimension, blah, 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 and which, mind you, is all illusion and in your head and craziness. But so that was all that. It worked. It was really fun. You guys, mom and dad, found out that I was doing some pot and acid and stuff at the end of my senior year. And in my opinion at the time, it was a complete overreaction to a total misunderstanding.
Another one-liner.
And you guys decided to ship me off to, or I don't know if you invited me or just decided to, but I wound up at rehab number 1 in Tennessee, which we didn't call rehab. It was therapy
camp.
Yeah, camp. Therapy camp. And I was suggested to do 90 days. Instead, I did 45 because we had a vacation to get to in Newport. And it just so happened that they called me an alcoholic and an addict, and they put me in the alcoholic addict house, but I didn't identify as one. I just called myself someone with obsessive tendencies. And I think all of us were willing to believe that narrative.
Yeah, we were all equal accomplices in this corroboration of a story at the time of, I think Mom and I for sure believed that the extensive levels of trauma that you had experienced in life were enough reason to be using drugs by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And then being gay, growing up in a Christian community, and Mom and I finding our way in that, you finding your way in that, that was enough. That was enough reason. So it was like at first pass, it was just easy to see this is a complete overreaction to a total misunderstanding, right? Like, and we can get through this.
Yep.
So let's get you some help. Let's figure out what's going on. And then let's see if you can reintegrate into real life after a intervention of therapy and some clarity. And then let's try Boulder, Colorado for college. Let's see how it goes, and we'll abort if it doesn't go well.
Part 2 in Boulder of fun. And I did nothing. I was just a student who raised their hand in the front of the classroom and was on top of all my assignments. And I'm smart. I do well in school. And improv theater, 2 jobs, I don't know, 4, 5 classes. I was on top of it. And it was all going really well. And I decided to, and I believe this next part is inevitable. It wasn't, if I just not decided to, that's a longer conversation I'll spare at the moment. But, I started smoking pot again, and drinking, I want to say 2 months into Boulder or whatever. And mind you, I didn't identify as an alcoholic or an addict. I just had obsessive tendencies. So as long as I watch it, it's fine. But, the way I describe it to, normies and other alcoholics is, that I was set up with the right laptop, the right coffee maker, the right bed sheets, the right dorm room. I'd been to the crazy therapy in Tennessee, and I talked to the horses, and it was all good. And so I was set up for success, sparkling, shiny, new. And a famous alcoholic line is, you'd drink too if you had blank, blank, blank that I do. So the same narrative that you guys bought into of, well, no wonder he has so much trauma and blah, blah, blah.
I would drink too if I grew up like that.
100%. It works for all people involved. And I genuinely believe that. And what I came to believe for myself is that I grown up as a bubble boy on a desert island with no access to any substance ever, and no one ever hurt me. It was just rainbows and butterflies, I would be exactly who I am.
And that's really mature, and it's taken a lot of work to get there. So what I want to do is I want to pick up when we were talking yesterday. You were talking about moving from, and you mentioned it today, the battery acid, feeling that constantly. And then if you fast forward to being in Costa Mesa, you are at rehab number 3, in your words. You're getting evicted from sober living. You still hadn't kind of hit the bottom yet, is I think how you would say it.
Yeah.
But it was sure hard to watch and ugly, and just kept getting worse. But you weren't drinking and using, and you were at that time saying, I am an alcoholic and a drug addict, but not actually actively working 12 steps yet. So pick us up that part of the story and take us through what began to change and shift. And what did you start doing? What did you start believing, and who'd you start listening to?
So I've got that God-sized hole I was talking about, that burning, which I didn't have those words for at the time, but all I could describe it as a burning battery, corrosive acid feeling. And drugs and alcohol worked, and then they didn't. And Q rehab number 3, and we're going to ship Holden off to California, and I'm going to get sober and live his whole new life out there. And I'd done all the therapies at this point, all the prayers and stuff. As far as I knew, I was sparkly, shiny, and new. And I'm in Costa Mesa in California, and they tell you to get involved with 12-step programs. And I pretended to. They said that if you get a mentor, then you get your phone back. And so I found myself a mentor, and I just neglected to do anything that he recommended. And so then I am bopping around, and what I now know is that 12-step programs for me were my bridge to my higher power. And that's ultimately my medicine. You have a God-sized hole, and so I need a God-sized solution. But I didn't have that connection yet. It never left me. I just didn't know how to access it. And so I'm not taking my medicine. And I don't have drugs or alcohol.
And you don't mean a literal. You weren't on meds.
Oh, yeah. Actually, I was on a shit ton of meds.
But as you came off those,
that soon came off also. And for myself, I'm really glad I was off of meds. But I wasn't taking my spiritual medicine, and then I also didn't have drugs and alcohol anymore. My self-prescribed medicine. And so I just am just a burning, flailing God-sized hole. And what that looked like was, I was way worse internally than I ever was when I was drinking and using. And that's not everyone's experience, but that was my experience. I jumped back into like self-harm, and was losing all the hair in my head, and I couldn't get out of bed, and I just hurt and ached. And I think I mentioned this yesterday, but my favorite stories are the alcoholic who gets in the crazy car accident, or loses the wife and the children and the blah, 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 and has that big, crazy rock bottom moment, but doesn't make the change. You hear that thing happened, let's say in January, their horrible event, and they get sober in August. Like they just, scrape along the bottom,
drag the anchor a little further.
Drag the anchor through all the barnacles. So I did that. So it hurt like hell. I was told, hey, if you do this, you might feel better. And then this being engaged in 12-step program at the time. And I did not do that. And so I didn't drink either. And I just dragged along the bottom a little longer.
So this involves you being temporarily, but homeless.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. and not, I mean, I was homeless. I
technically homeless, although you had some friends that allowed you to couch surf.
Yeah. Couch commitments.
Yeah. Couch commitments for short periods of time. And you are walking the streets of Costa Mesa, jobless at the time.
Mm-hmm. During El Nino, which means it's like 107 every day.
Yeah. And then it's concrete city too. So it's crazy hot.
Covered in homeless shit.
You're outside all day because the couch commitments that you had only started at 1 a.m. after they got off work. Your mentor let you crash there for a little while. And part of what we kept hearing was until you take some ownership over your life, which was a scary gamble for everybody, because were you going to do it or not? Nobody knew. You didn't know.
And I didn't know at the time, but how many people also don't.
And how many people don't, which your experience now is probably what, 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10?
9 out of 10 don't.
Yeah, 9 out of 10 don't actually.
At least this round. Maybe they make it back later on and they do, but I would say 9 out of 10 don't.
And 9 out of 10 don't not only stop using, but even actually then, if they do stop using, in your case, you weren't using, but the pain was even worse because you didn't have the medicine of the alcohol and drugs. So talk to us about what changed, where did the light start coming on? Tell us about the assignment that your mentor gave you in 12 steps that you actually started doing.
So I'm dragging along the bottom. This was not after some crazy event. I had a rock bottom moment, I'd say a few months prior, and done little to nothing about it. And I'm like, I want to say 6 months sober at this point, and I'm on Tinder, still unemployed, and mind you, eating nothing but dry Oriental ramen and 2 Dr. Pepper double gulps a day, and smoking a pack of Newport 100s daily.
On your $80 a week.
$80 a week. Yeah, couldn't afford, or chose not to afford rent, and chose not to get a job. But I made sure I had makeup, hair dye, cigarettes, and Dr. Pepper. All the essentials.
The 10 essentials.
Yeah, exactly. So I decided to jump on dating. And as I'm swiping through the apps, I find out, I start talking to this guy, and I start being concerned that he might be an alcoholic. And with my newfound sobriety, I can't jeopardize that. And so I decided to call up that mentor and get his opinion, his diagnosis, if he thinks this guy's an alcoholic and if I should drop him. And so I was talking to my mentor in Ralph's grocery store over the phone, which to help paint the picture, he is a 6'3", 56-year-old Jewish man from Brooklyn who spends a decent amount of his time touring the country in drag as characters as Lemon Shmomely, spelled exactly like lemon chamomile. So that's my mentor to this day, and my dear, dear, dear friend. That man has helped save my life.
Yeah. +1 on that.
And so I'm calling him up to get the diagnoses on this Tinder date and whether or not he's an alcoholic. And believe it or not, my mentor had zero interest in whether or not this Tinder guy was an alcoholic. And he started saying, like, what the hell? If you have time to be swiping through apps and going on dates and then you have time to be talking to other alcoholics. And I was like, what? No, God, no, I'm not doing that.
Why would I?
Yeah, that's horrible. So
my life's going so well.
These are exactly. These are one of the suggestions. So Holden's running Holden's life, and I'm surviving on Dr. Pepper cigarettes and walking around in the hot sun all day, unemployed, and forgetting everyone's birthdays. Duh. And somebody else is trying to give me a suggestion of another way to do my life, and I can't hear it. And so he tells me I should call 2 alcoholics today. And he clarifies these can't be people from my rehab or from my IOP or blah, blah, blah. And the reason being that and these are people that are also like inpatient with me, or, they're checked into a facility like me. And the reason being that when your boat is sinking, when the Titanic is going down, you don't call the other people in the Titanic and say, holy shit, we're going down. Like, I know, we're going down. It's insane.
What are we going to do?
Yeah. What are we going to do? The people that are also drowning in the boat can't help you get off the boat. You call the Coast Guard. So I had to call people that were working the 12-step program, that had more time than I did, and weren't from my rehab or IOP. I was like, what? No, hell no, I'm not doing that. And he's like, all right, fine. You have to call 4 alcoholics today. I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. 6 alcoholics. I'm not doing that. All right, Holden, for you, you're so sick. 10 alcoholics.
So fast forward, we're at Disneyland.
Mm-hmm.
We're visiting you in your outpatient treatment program. You get this assignment to call 10 alcoholics a day. And while we're kind of, at lunch or different things, you're off on the side dialing alcoholics that you don't know, that you got phone numbers from because you did attend meetings and you saved them in your phone. And that's kind of part of the practice of the 12-step, right? So tell us how you started calling those. What did you say? And then tell us about how they started picking up the phone. And one of the stories I remember is about getting picked up a burrito for you and a Coke, and pick us up there.
So I don't know why. This is not the first suggestion he gave me, or anyone had given me. I don't know why, but it's the first one that for some reason sank in. And I'm realizing now, I don't know why this would have been the case, but I think this is one of my first whiffs of the apple pie, thinking just maybe kind of, sort of, maybe something's over there. And so I started calling these 10 alcoholics, and the best case scenario is you can figure out everyone's work schedules and make sure to call them while they're at work. That way they don't answer, because if 10 people answer the phone, you're on there for a while, which is great when you're unemployed. I don't know what else I had to do, but certainly not that.
Buy cigarettes and Cokes and hair dye.
And so I started to get everyone's like work schedules and stuff, and I'd call them up and, hi, it's your old friend Holden calling. And a lot of these people I had just met. Hi, it's your old friend Holden calling. My sponsor says I'm a very sick alcoholic. So sick, in fact, that I need to call 10 alcoholics every day. Thank you for letting... Oh, so sick, in fact, that my alcoholism has spread to my ears. Thank you for letting me call you. I feel 1/10 less sick. And click, hang up. And then, worst case scenario is a few of those would actually answer the phone. And then you're stuck. And so I started talking to these people, and one of them specifically, who I'm actually supposed to see on a digital Zoom meeting later on today. Some 12-step person ended up on my phone, and I'm not quite sure how the number ended up there, but I didn't have enough numbers in my phone to be picky and choosy. And so I just started calling this one. And this guy, this man, would answer my phone calls all the time. I had no idea who he was, but he knew who my mentor was. And we would talk, and for months, this stranger I'd never met would answer my phone calls every single day at work and tell me little stories about them, listen to my woes and my boy troubles and my employment sorrows. That man helped save my life as well. So that was the first time I started doing something that somebody else suggested. I took 1% of a suggestion given to me, and I started to feel about 2% better. And I don't know if I can necessarily correlated those two at the time, but my life started getting a little bit bigger. So what happened is for the first time ever, I'm trying this whole 12-step thing, and I'm bopping around the streets of Costa Mesa in the heat. And like you mentioned, the person I was staying with, they would leave. I had to leave for work at 9 a.m. and they wouldn't get home from their job until 1 a.m. And they very justifiably so would not give me the key to their apartment. And so I would just wander. I had like a 4-hour shift, and I would just wander the streets in July in Costa Mesa.
So you just mentioned you started doing 1% of what people were suggesting, and the experience of your life started getting 2% better.
Mm-hmm.
And then how did that build momentum over time? So fast forward, you're now a mentor and you're giving back. What was the kind of key moment? So you mentioned like the burrito story. Go back to that story.
So my mentor is not coming home until late in the day. I'm walking around the hot streets, and one day I'm walking around, and I run out of cigarettes, which is the worst possible thing. I can handle all this insanity and the heat and the craziness with nicotine in my system. Without, it gets a little dicey. And so I just smoked my last cigarette, and I panicked, and I started freaking out. And I didn't realize the gravity of this at the time. But as this is happening, I see this other guy I recognized from the 12-step program. He was about my age, and I knew him, but he walked right by me on the street and wouldn't say hi, and he looked weird. And I was like, what the hell? So I was, what do I do? I started panicking. Like, what do I do? What do I do when you're feeling sorry for yourself? And you're supposed to call another alcoholic. And so I just dialed one that was my phone. I call him, and it goes to voicemail, and I hang up the phone, and then I'm out of options. I didn't try calling anyone else, but for some reason that guy called me back about 5 minutes later. And he's like, hi, what's going on? I barely knew this one. And I'm on the corner. And he's like, oh, where are you? He was with his friends at Target. He dropped the friends at Target, came, picked up me on a street corner, drove me to the nearest Sonic, got me a large slushie, and then gave me the 7 other cigarettes that were left in his pack of cigarettes. And he just let me smoke his cigarettes and drink his slushies and cry in the passenger seat of his car. And he saved my life that day. He 100% did. So yes, to your point, I just took then, and that was the best I could do. And the wonderful people of the 12-step program supported and loved me, and until I could love myself. And I fast forward down the road, started getting employment, started getting a car. And there's a long time where I didn't have a car. I didn't have a car until I was 3-something years sober. And I didn't have and I was broke. I was just always broke. And so I didn't have a lot of resources to offer people. I couldn't give them rides to places, and couldn't help buy them a whole lot of things. So the best thing I had was my time that I could give, and that involved a lot of phone calls. And then as time went on, as I got those things, and I started being able to give people rides to meetings, and I started being able to buy the burritos and the slushies and the cigarettes to the other people that came after me. And I worked at Starbucks for a while, and that was a really important time of my life. And I had a really wonderful boss who was very patient with me, a literal angel in my life story. And as I graduated from Starbucks, I've gotten to get a lot of people jobs there because I got to leave in good standing. And it's really, everything that's come to me has in some way, shape, or form been able to delta out to all the people I get to know. So that's been a blessing. So yeah, now fast forward 5 years, the pandemic hit. I was in California, and I got that apple pie whiff of go back home, and didn't know why. And I kind of panicked. I came home to Colorado for a 3-week visit, went back out to California, and decided to pack up all my stuff and move here. And I didn't really know why. But I just knew it was time. And I've gotten to spend the past 6 months hanging out with you guys for the first time ever. And we're all healthy and well and grown up. And that's been really amazing and wonderful. But I booked my flight a while ago to move to LA today. And I've had that date in mind for 6 months. In addition to that, too, I was planning on getting this tattoo for forever. And by forever, I mean, I've been dreaming of this tattoo since I was about 15. I made the appointment at the beginning of the pandemic, about 6-7 months ago, to get the tattoo. And then I custom designed it, spent hours on Photoshop figuring out, tweaking, sending 14 different versions to my friends about which one do you think, and blah, blah, and printing it out, life size against my arm. I put a lot of thought and intent into this tattoo.
Which is your artist heart at work.
Mm-hmm. And then I first time ever I ever booked a tattoo in advance and waited months, and I set aside money for it. And then I am driving in the car to go get this tattoo. I'd booked it about 3 months out. And I had found out that morning that our family had been exposed to someone that had coronavirus. And plot twist, we all ended up having coronavirus. And
plot twist.
The day of, I find out I got to cancel that tattoo and not get it. So I was pissed. So I rescheduled it again a week before this tattoo. This is 2 weeks ago from right now. I have been positive about LA, moving to LA today. And I've been positive about this tattoo for months. It had been the intention. I put in probably a dozen hours of looking into places. I've looked at hundreds of apartments in LA, a lot of work and effort into all of that. And same with this tattoo, a lot of versions and hours and work and intent into it. And out of nowhere, about 2 weeks ago, I was up late. I started panicking about LA and the tattoo, wondering if they were the right move for me, I thought I was just maybe getting cold feet. Wasn't quite sure. But what I didn't know is it was the beginning of that nudge of something else is in store. And so I didn't panic and cancel any plans, but I just took that into account. Oh, that's interesting that for the first time I'm nervous about this. And then a week later, it's time for me to get my tattoo. And mind you, the artist had already approved this. I had sent it to him. He quoted me how long. The secretary helped me pick this artist based on the style and stuff. So I roll up last week, had the time off of work to go get the 6-hour tattoo. And I roll up and the guy says, "Oh, I'm not doing that." And he gave me a list of reasons, and I'm grateful that he was upfront with me about it. But long story short, I wound up with a completely different tattoo in a completely different location. And the moral of that story for me was Holden's plan. Which I should have put the intent and effort and the footwork into getting that tattoo. That was the right move with the information I had at the time. But Holden's plan was to walk down that path. And little did I know that there was a apple pie whiff waiting for me. And also this tattoo artist did say he would do the original one I requested, but he just gave me the 10 reasons why we shouldn't do that. And I followed the whiff and I got a different tattoo, and I'm so happy with it. And it was totally the right move. And so that got me thinking, like, oh wow, if I was nervous about this tattoo and that did end up working out, I wonder what's going to happen with LA. And a few days ago, I woke up with anxiety about it and came upstairs. Mom mentioned something about Denver. Fast forward to me popping open Craigslist ads and looking at what's available up there, and then calling my tribe back in Orange County and running a decision by them, doing some journaling, blah, blah, blah. And now, today, I'm flying to California to go pick up all my shit in the storage unit, throw it in the back of a Honda Pilot, and drive back here to Denver, Colorado Springs, so I can move to Denver as opposed to LA.
I love you, buddy.
I love
these. What I love about these stories, just for us to double click on them and zoom in on them, is, and I hope you, our friends listening, hear them as deeply human stories that you can relate to, whether specifically or just mythically. And mythically meaning I'm headed down a path. I'm bent on something happening that I've been planning for a really long time. and I'm keep doing all the planning and the action to make it happen, make it come to life. And there's just something about it that doesn't feel right, whether at the last minute, whether the day before, or whether all along. And what I love about your story, Holden, is that you've developed the awareness to know the difference of it used to be battery acid on your chest all the time, and you've gotten healthy and whole enough that that isn't how you live. And so you can now distinguish. So now when you have anxiety and you wake up about where you're going to live, or nervousness about discomfort, dis-ease around what tattoo you're going to get, you stop and pay attention. And that's amazing clarity. And so many people don't have that. So many people just barrel through and just live with the battery acid, for one, or some degree of just constant anxiety and unsettledness. But you've learned and you've done the hard work to be healthy and whole enough that now there's a difference. And then when that difference happens, you pay attention, and you pay attention and ask different questions. So one of the things you mentioned yesterday that I think would be helpful for people to hear is to understand why you're willing to ask a different question and are curious about the whiffs of apple pie from the work of God in your life. 25 cents versus $1 from the higher power. Tell us that story.
So a lesson that was taught to me early on is that very frequently, I'm holding on to a quarter and God's got $1. And what that looks like is that, so in the just story I just told, the original tattoo in LA were the quarter. To the best of my knowledge of the information I had at the time, those looked like the right move. And so I should hold on tight to those decisions. But I got that little nudge, and little did I know that God has $1 waiting. That has been everything from the roommates I've had in the past to different job opportunities, down to which friend I saw on a Sunday afternoon that I had off. There's just the plan that Holden had for Holden, and it looked like the right move, and that's the quarter. And when I get that little nudge of X, Y, and Z didn't work out, it looks like a bad thing, but it's because God's holding on to $1.
So it sounds like, Holden, if you called 10 alcoholics, is like $1.
Quarter is an extra cigarette, and
just get like the
2
quarter
more hours
is
on Netflix.
Yeah, right. Then had I not run out of cigarettes, would be the quarter in your pocket versus pick up the phone, call other alcoholics, and a guy ends up coming to rescue you and give you a Slurpee, right? So that's the $1. So what I appreciate is that you have these stories of a personal experience where you were fiercely holding on to the quarter that you were demanding, and you found a way through a lot of pain to release and be curious and try something different, follow the nudge, follow the apple pie whiffed, be curious about, and then as a result, when it concludes later, you see, oh, wow, this $1 was way better. So just to be specific is like that God's with you, for you, has plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to bring you hope in a future. And when you step into that, it doesn't mean it's always zippity doo-dah.
No, yeah.
Right, at all. But it does mean that you've learned to live in a way that you can just maintain curiosity along with taking the next right step that's in front of you.
And now I can take that step in almost a cavalier way. I can up and change my plan from one side of the continent to the middle of it within a day or two, because I have a body of evidence of every other time that my higher power has come through to me. An example you brought up yesterday, and this is just a very concrete example, but I literally, for the first 3 years I was sober, never knew where my rent was going to come from that month. I just could not afford it. I was always broke, and the numbers just did not add up. And every single day for 3.5 years, I never had to be late. I never had to get evicted. I always had a roof over my head. And I always tell people that I never had to go without a roof over my head or without food in my belly if I didn't want to. There's times where I chose to go without food in my belly because I didn't want to swallow my pride and ask for help or tell somebody, hey, this is what's really going on. But I never had to have that if I didn't want to.
So tonight, when you fly out, go to Orange County, you go get your belongings, sell off a bunch of them or leave behind them, come back here. Here still isn't defined. It's just an idea of I'll move to Denver, starting to talk to some friends who live there, as well as some, apartment complexes and stuff. So even that is still pretty uncertain, right? Like, how do you know for sure? How do you know it's the right thing? And again, I'm asking these questions because not only do I think it's interesting for the specifics of your story, but I just think it's very relatable because so many people struggle with making big decisions because unless I want to know, how it's going to go. I just want to figure out how do I get my 25 cents.
And I think I told this to you yesterday, but I was up late and I was on step 6 of the 7-step application for an apartment complex, and I was dead set, and I realized, I stopped myself in the last bit of it because I realized that I was making that decision out of fear or out of discomfort. I didn't want to be in discomfort anymore. I was deciding at 2:00 in the morning.
You wanted to end the discomfort.
Yep. At 2:00 in the morning, I was deciding, which is all great decisions are made at 2:00 in the morning.
On step 6 of the application. Okay.
I had decided that I had enough this discomfort. It's been months and God damn it, I want to have a place to live. And I thankfully froze and said, okay, wait, or I can, do something else.
Which is amazing. Like that you're that conscious of, oh, wow, I know what I'm doing.
I still fill out the application,
Yeah, right. But you made it to step 6, filling it out, recognizing I know what I'm doing. I am attempting to, and you mentioned this yesterday, of demanding an outcome versus knowing and believing that the nudge, as you say, is worth waiting for.
And my good friend always says, "Where's mine? Where's mine?" And so at 2:00 in the morning, I was afraid that Holden's not going to get mine, and somebody else can get that apartment. They're going to get the better price. I'm going to get screwed. I'm not taken care of. Blah 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 blah. All that crammed into, oh, this looks fun, like a nice little spot, But and thankfully now my fear and my alcoholism only have so many tricks in their book. And so it all kind of looks the same after a while. And so, this old routine. Okay.
I remember this one.
2:00 in the morning, a little nervy. It's starting to make sense again.
So good. Well, what I love is I just think the level of maturity that I've seen in you in learning to lead yourself and learning to lead with honesty and integrity, even in those moments, because it's hard to admit to another human, this is actually what I was doing. Because objectively, it would make sense. Like, well, of course, you need a place to live and you need to make a decision. And, well, yeah, if you know you're not going to LA, you might as well do it now. What the difference is in the maturity that I see you lead your life with now is you really do it in a way that is believing. The words I would use is, instead of in the spirit of scarcity, of there's only so many apartments and I better get it now and I better figure this out and I want this discomfort of uncertainty to go away, and I've got a quarter in my pocket and damn it, this is good enough, versus the spirit of abundance of like, God's with me, for me, and I don't know where this is going to go, but I know that if I am fierce about committing to demanding it to turn out a certain way on a certain timeline, then that probably isn't going to go as well as if I'm just open-handed, curious, know that there's whiffs of apple pie in the air, in nudges that I can follow, and allow it to unfold over time, which is a lot more uncomfortable because you don't get the resolution to the uncertainty that you're dealing with and living with. So even today, we were talking about, well, maybe we'll hit an apartment before we go to the airport. And you very maturely said, you know what, that's just trying to shove one too many things in and cramming it versus waiting a week, come back, and then kind of start that process. So I'd love it if you could just give us some advice listening from your experience in your life thus far at 24. What is it that you've learned that enables you to just be willing to live with all that tension all at the same time.
I think interestingly, my first example where I was able to notice and articulate the apple pie whiff thing happening in my life was when I was looking for my very first apartment in California. I was going from the homeless situation, from the slushy and the running out of cigarettes. It was that same 2-week period. I was going from living on somebody's couch to my very first apartment ever, which would also is code for me living in somebody's dining room with a pit bull and a cat that pissed and shit on my bed daily. But
true story.
Which was all a wonderful and necessary time also. I was with this new friend and we were going to go find an apartment together, and we had looked at like 9 different places, and at each of the ones there's a problem of blah, 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 didn't have the right bank statement things happening, and that they actually last minute changed the price of the rent, and just everywhere we went, it was brick walls. It was speed bumps, and if I needed X, Y, and Z to align in order for Holden's plan to work, and it was not working at all these 9 different places. And suddenly we walk into this one apartment, and this place ended up being a godsend. I have crazy stories from this place as well, but it was a total godsend. But I walk in and everything was smooth as butter. Like the real estate agent had just gotten finished with a showing and happened to be free to show us this one right now. We walk in and actually we already had the correct money order. Oh, just walk 20 feet across the street to the 7-Eleven to get this and blah, blah. And we were in with keys in like 3 hours, and it was perfect. And I was talking about it with the roommate, the new roommate at the time, and I was like, wow, that's crazy. Like we worked so hard to get into all these other places and it was not working. But what I would know now is that when God's fingerprints are on it, it just all goes smooth as butter. And so exactly, today looking for a place, it would have made sense to go try and view. We're already in Denver, might as well look at an apartment, but that it wasn't smooth as butter. You and I wanted to get this done, and I'm so glad that we did. And there's some other things that need to happen, and this feels much more smooth as butter. That would have felt more janky.
So, God-sized holes, how to listen to the inner voice, walking life with a mentor, paying attention to the difference between battery acid on my chest and anxiety. And the anxiety is actually telling us something. It's a check engine light to pay attention to. About to do A, B, and C until I could learn to love myself. About quarters in our pocket and holding out for the belief that there is a dollar and there's a higher power on our behalf and with us and for us, and taking other people's advice until my life starts getting 2% better by doing the next right step in front of me, and acknowledging that a God-sized hole isn't going to get fixed with drugs, alcohol, other addictions of all kinds. And here you are at 24, launching into a new chapter of going big. Any closing words?
Thanks for doing this to me, Bucko.
I love you.
Love you. Thanks for giving an alcoholic a microphone and asking them to talk about themselves for an hour.
So good. Let's keep going, huh?
Yeah.